Daddy. The word fell out of a 3-year-old's mouth, soft, confused, devastating. And on the other end of that phone line, the most feared crime boss in the city stopped breathing. His entire empire, the warehouses, the contracts, the men who would die on his word, none of it existed in that single second. Only the voice. Only that one small word from a child he never knew was his. In the apartment across the city, 2 debt collectors had just made the worst mistake of their lives. They had threatened the son of Vincent Moretti, and they had no idea the boy had already called him. If this story hit you, subscribe right now and tell me what city you are watching from. I want to see how far one phone call travels. Open the door or we open it ourselves. Rico Vargas said it the way men say things when they have already decided the conversation is over. Low, flat, without anger, which was worse than anger. Anger meant a person still had something to prove. That voice meant they didn't. Olivia Harris pressed her back against the door and didn't move. She was 31 years old. She was a nurse. She worked double shifts at St. Mary's, and she bought her son's cereal in bulk, and she knew how to calculate with brutal precision exactly how little she had. Tonight, the number was $68. She'd counted it 4 times, moved the bills around, like rearranging furniture in a burning house. 10s first, then 5s, then 1s. Always 68, never enough. Mr. Caruso wanted 3,000. Through the peephole, she could see them, Rico Vargas in front, neck like a tree stump. Eyes that blinked too slow, the eyes of a man who had made peace with whatever he had to do. Tony Russo behind him, taller, thinner gold, on every finger wearing the particular expression of someone who genuinely enjoyed his work. She had seen Rico twice before standing outside this building, watching, never waving. She had told herself it meant nothing. She had been lying to herself. From the living room, Aiden's voice, "Mama, who's there?" Her son, 3 years old, 34 pounds of pure trust. "Stay into the living room, baby." She kept her voice even, practiced. The voice she used when she needed him to obey without understanding why. "Keep playing with your blocks." The door shook on its frame. Olivia took one breath and unlocked it. Rico walked in the way water fills a space immediately, completely without asking. Tony followed and pulled the door shut behind him like a man making a point about exits. "Ms. Harris." Rico's gaze moved across the apartment in one sweep, taking inventory. "Let's keep this simple. I told you on the phone I don't have it." She held her ground in the middle of the room. "I have $68. I have a shift at St. Mary's Monday. I can have something to you by 3,000, Rico said, "tonight." "I cannot get $3,000 tonight. That's not something I can do." She kept her hands visible, her voice level. She had learned that the most dangerous thing you could do in a room with men like this was show them your fear before they decided whether to use it. "I have a 3-year-old son. I have $68. Please give me until Monday." Rico walked past her to the kitchen counter. He picked up the stack of bills without looking at her, counted it, put it in his pocket. Olivia watched him take the last of her grocery money and did not move. "That's for food," she said quietly. "Apply it to your balance," Rico said. Tony had moved to the bookshelf. He was picking things up and setting them down with the disinterest of a man at a garage sale, a small ceramic bowl, Aiden's library books, a framed photo. He held the photo up, looked at it for 2 seconds, set it back down. Then he stopped. He picked it up again. He looked at Rico. Rico crossed the room. He took the photo. It was small dollar store frame, slightly crooked because Aiden kept touching it. It showed a woman who was clearly Olivia, younger, lighter, in the eyes before 3 years of running, had taken whatever it took. And beside her, with his arm around her shoulder, a man whose face Rico Vargas recognized the way you recognize something fundamental, without processing, without delay. Vincent Moretti. The temperature of the room changed. Rico turned the photograph toward her slowly. "Where did you get this?" "It's old. It's nobody. We don't—" "This is Vincent Moretti, Rico said. He said it the way you say this is a loaded gun. This is Vincent Moretti with his arm around you like you're his. We knew each other a long time ago. We're not in contact." The lie came out clean. She had practiced a version of it for 3 years. "I haven't spoken to him since before I moved here." Rico set the photo on the shelf face down. He turned to Tony. Something passed between them. Not words, just the adjustment of 2 men who have just realized the floor is less solid than they thought. The kid, Tony said. His voice was different now. Slower. How old? Olivia said nothing. Ms. Harris. Tony's gold rings caught the light as he crossed his arms. How old is your son? A beat. The beat before an avalanche. 3, she said. The silence that followed had mass and weight and edges. Rico looked at Tony. Tony looked at Rico. Neither of them looked at her. They were doing something behind their eyes that was fast and private and clearly not landing anywhere comfortable. And in the kitchen, unheard, unseen, because the world had the specific chaos of a moment when every adult is focused on the wrong thing, a 3-year-old boy sitting by the back door found a phone on the floor. A small black phone prepaid with 3 contacts programmed in. He turned it over with both hands. He found the buttons with his thumbs the way children find buttons without trying, without thinking. He pressed the one on the left. The call connected. Olivia didn't know she was watching Rico put her $68 in his jacket. She was watching Tony move toward the bookshelf with the leisure of a man who has decided the valuables are his to decide on. She was calculating exits to the front door blocked, the back door where Aiden was, and the phone in her hand, and whether calling 911 would help or detonate something worse. She didn't hear the call connect. What she heard was Rico Vargas stop moving. He had found the other photograph, the one she'd put up high, half hidden behind a nursing textbook because she needed it to exist somewhere in the world, but couldn't look at it every day. The one she'd taken before she understood what understanding something too late would cost. Same man, same face, different moment. Rico's small eyes went very still. Tony, he said, not loud, barely above a breath. Tony came over, looked at the photo, said nothing. She borrowed money from Caruso's books, Rico said slowly, still staring at the photo. Under a different name. She's got 2 photographs of Vincent Moretti in her apartment. He paused. And she's got a 3-year-old son. The math was simple. The conclusion was not. Who's the kid's father? Tony said. He wasn't asking her. He was asking the room. I need you both to leave, Olivia said. She said it clearly, deliberately, the way you speak when you want the words to land without static. Right now, take the $68. I'll have more for you Monday. But you need to leave this apartment right now. Rico turned and looked at her. In the kitchen, Aiden said into the phone with perfect clarity and perfect confidence, Hello, is anybody there? And on the 42nd floor of a building across the city, Vincent Moretti put down a glass of water and picked up his private line. Yes, he said. Static, noise, someone moving. He was about to hang up when he heard it. Small, high, entirely certain of itself. Hello, I'm Aiden. I found the phone. Vincent Moretti stood up from his chair. The 3 men sitting across the table from him, men who had negotiated contracts with him for a decade, men who had watched him take things apart with his bare hands and put them back together the way he wanted them all, 3 straightened involuntarily at the same moment, responding to something in his posture they couldn't name. Aiden, Vincent said. The word came out of him like the first word of a language he'd just discovered he already knew. Where's your mama? In the other room, there are 2 scary men. A pause, practical, careful his mother's son. I'm by the back door. Mama told me to stay here. Your mama's right. Vincent was already walking, moving before the decision had fully formed because some decisions don't need to form, they simply are. Aiden, I need you to stay exactly where you are and not make any noise. Can you do that? Yeah. The sound of a small person settling in, getting comfortable with a plan. Are you coming? Vincent stopped. 3 words. 8 letters. The simplest question a child could ask. And they hit him in the center of his chest with the force of something he had no armor for, because he had never needed armor for this. He had not known this existed to need armor for. Yes, he said, I'm coming. He looked at the men at his table. One look. 12 years of working for him meant they all stood up at the same moment. South Boston. All cars. Now. He was already in the hallway. And someone find out which of my people authorized a loan to a woman on Waverly Street 18 months ago. I want a name in 5 minutes. He put the phone back to his ear. The child was still there. He could hear him breathing steady, unfrightened, the breathing of a child who has been told something will happen and believes it completely. Aiden, he kept his voice even, warm in a way he hadn't accessed in years. I'm going to stay on the line. Don't hang up. Okay, Aiden said. Then very quiet, very serious, the voice of a child who has been sitting with a question and has decided the time is now. Are you my daddy? The elevator doors open. Vincent stepped inside. The doors closed. He looked at his own reflection in the polished steel. 42 floors, 30 years of building something that could not be touched. A face that had made people reconsider their decisions without a word spoken. And one question from a 3-year-old that had just taken it all apart in 6 syllables. "Yeah, kid," he said. His voice was someone else's voice. Someone younger. Someone who hadn't yet learned to put everything behind glass. "I think I am." In the background, he heard a crash. A woman's voice, sharp, controlled fear. The sound of something breaking. And then from further away, the voice of a man who had just made the worst mistake of his professional life. "Next time we come back, we don't come alone." The elevator hit the ground floor. Vincent walked through the lobby and into the rain. Marco was already at the curb, 3 cars behind him, men in each, engines running. Vincent got in and said one sentence. "If anyone in that apartment is harmed, there is no version of tonight where those 2 men go home." Marco drove. Back on Waverly Street, something had shifted in the room. Rico had made the call. He'd stepped to the far corner and spoken for 45 seconds in a voice too low for Olivia to catch fully, but she'd caught enough. "Moretti, yeah, I think so, the kid's 3. And when he'd come back to the center of the room, his entire bearing had changed. The professional ease was gone. In its place was something compressed and careful, the body language of a man who is recalculating whether he is the most dangerous person in the situation. He was not. "Here's where we are," Rico said. He put both hands in his jacket pockets. The photograph was still face down on the shelf. "You clearly have a complicated history with a complicated person. That changes the nature of this conversation. I told you I don't have a relationship with Vincent Moretti." "You have his child," Tony said from across the room. "I have a son," Olivia said, flat, final. "Mine. Does Moretti know about him?" She said nothing. "Lady," Rico's voice had dropped to something almost not kind, but something that understood kindness existed. "Does Vincent Moretti know he has a 3-year-old son in South Boston?" The silence answered. Rico closed his eyes for exactly 1 second, opened them, looked at Tony with the expression of a man watching a bridge give out under him in slow motion. "We need to leave," Tony said. "We can't just—" "Rico!" Tony's voice was sharp, urgent, stripped of the board performance entirely. "We need to leave right now." And that was when Olivia understood. Not that they were frightened of Vincent Moretti, she had always known they would be, in the abstract way that everyone in the city understood what Vincent Moretti meant, but that they were frightened of what they had already done, of being in this room, of the photograph in Rico's pocket where his inventory of her life now sat alongside his own death warrant. "You should go," she said, for the second time, more gently now, almost meaning it. Rico looked at her one more time. He looked at the face-down photograph. He looked at the kitchen doorway. He walked to the front door without another word. Tony followed. Olivia heard them on the stairs, fast, not running, but fast. She waited until the street door slammed below before she moved. She went to the kitchen. Aiden was sitting by the back door with the phone pressed to his ear with both hands. His small face concentrated and serious like a businessman finishing an important call. "Mama," he said, holding the phone out to her. "The man wants to talk to you." She took the phone. Her hand was shaking. She put it to her ear. "Olivia," 1 word. Her name, in a voice she had spent 3 years trying to unhear with limited success. The voice that lived in the place where she stored things that had no other home. Her legs went soft. She sat down on the kitchen floor next to her son, back against the back door, and for 3 full seconds, she could not speak. Olivia. Again. Not soft, not hard. Controlled at enormous scale. "Are you all right? Is he all right?" She pressed her hand over her mouth. "We're fine," she said. "They left us." "I know." A pause. "I heard him say his name." She closed her eyes. "He's okay," she whispered. "He's right here." "I know." Another pause longer with something enormous living inside it. "I'm 4 minutes away." "Vincent?" "We're going to talk," he said. "Not now, when I get there." The specificity of it, maybe not if you want, just when I get there, like it was already true, should have frightened her. It didn't. "Olivia, stay on the line." She stayed on the line. Aiden climbed into her lap. He tucked himself against her the way he always did when something was wrong, not asking for explanation, just finding the place in the world that was most reliably safe and arranging himself there without apology. He was warm and heavy, and he smelled like apple soap and cereal. "Mama," he said, looking up at her face with the specific assessment of a child reading a parent. "Is the man nice?" She looked down at him, at his father's dark eyes, his father's set jaw, the particular directness that she had told herself he'd gotten from her, but had always known the truth of. "Yeah, baby," she said. "He's coming to help." Aiden considered this, nodded once with the finality of someone who needed only one data point to make a decision. "Okay," he said, and settled against her like the matter was closed. 4 minutes later, she heard engines at the curb, then footsteps on the stairs, not two men shuffling out, but something measured and singular and absolutely certain of itself. The footsteps of a man who had decided where he was going before he left the car. They stopped outside her door. A pause, one breath long. Then Vincent Moretti walked through the broken door and stopped. He took in the room, the damage, the plaster, the missing television, the photograph face down on the shelf. He took in all of it in 1 second and filed it, and then his eyes found her and held. 3 years. He looked the same and entirely rebuilt. Same face, same jaw, same quality of stillness that always made every room he entered feel slightly smaller than it had been. But something around his eyes was new, some weight that had not been there before. Or maybe she was only able to see it now because she was looking with eyes that had stopped trying not to. His gaze moved from her face to the child standing beside her. Aiden looked up at Vincent Moretti with zero fear and complete attention. "You came," Aiden said, the satisfaction of someone who expected nothing less. Vincent crouched, right down to the child's level, without performance, without the false brightness adults use on children. Just a man getting low to be at eye level with someone very important. "Yeah," he said. His voice came out rough at the edges. "I came." Aiden leaned forward and examined his face with extraordinary concentration, memorizing it, cataloging it, running some internal 3-year-old verification process. Then he turned to Olivia with full seriousness. "Mama," he tugged her sleeve. "Is that my daddy?" The apartment went silent. Olivia looked at her son's face. She looked at Vincent, still low, still level with the child, and she saw something in his expression she had never seen in all the years she had known him. Not the empire, not the control, just a man, stripped to something fundamental and raw and terrified and hoping. She knelt down too. She put her hand on Aiden's back. "Yeah, baby," she said. "That's your daddy." Vincent reached out and placed his hand carefully, slowly, the way you reach towards something that might flee on top of Aiden's head. And Aiden, who had no history with this man and no reason for hesitation, who had been told he was coming, and he had come, and that was all the evidence required, stepped forward and put both arms around Vincent Moretti's neck and held on. Vincent closed his eyes. His arms came up slowly then, all at once, like something long, held back, finally released, and he held his son for the first time. In the hallway, 4 men stood with the professional blankness of people trained to see nothing. Marco caught Olivia's eye for one brief second and then looked deliberately away. Aiden pulled back. He patted Vincent's face with one small hand, patted it again. "Your face is scratchy," he announced. Something came out of Vincent's chest that was almost, not quite, but almost a laugh. Short and fractured and nothing like his usual controlled register. "Yeah," he said. "Sorry about that." "It's okay," Aiden said generously. "I don't mind." Olivia stood up. She needed her legs under her for whatever came next, because she knew she had always known that the moment between a father and a child could not hold the whole world off forever, and that eventually Vincent would stand up and look at her, and everything unsaid across 3 years would come looking for its turn. He stood. He looked at her. "Tell me everything they said," he said. "Every word, from the beginning." She told him. She didn't edit it. She didn't soften it. She told him the way she'd tell a colleague what happened in a trauma-based sequential specific without the unnecessary performance of emotion, because the facts themselves were emotional enough. The knock, the peephole, Rico's voice saying, "We know you're in there." The $68, the way Rico picked it up without looking at her and put it in his pocket. The specific devastating casualness of it. The photograph. The moment she watched Tony hold it up and pass it to Rico, and the temperature of the room changed not gradually, but like a switch had been thrown. And Aiden, the phone, the 6 minutes and 42 seconds. Vincent stood in the middle of her wrecked living room and listened without moving. His hands were in his jacket pockets. His eyes were on her face. He did not interrupt once. When she finished, the silence lasted 3 seconds. Pete Diaz, he said. She blinked. What? The loan. 18 months ago. The man in my organization who authorized it through Caruso's books. He said the name the way a doctor says the name of a disease, not with drama, just with the flat, exact weight of something that has consequences. Pete has been with me for 6 years. He knew who you were. He knew your assumed name. He knew this address. A pause. He chose to process the loan through Caruso specifically so that when the debt escalated, Caruso's people, not my people, would be the ones who showed up at your door. The air went out of the room. Olivia sat down on the arm of the couch. Her brain was already moving, pulling the last 18 months apart and putting it back together with this information inside it. The loan she'd believed was anonymous. The missed payment she'd understood as her own failure. The escalating pressure she'd read as the inevitable arithmetic of debt. None of it had been random. All of it had been pointed. Why, she said. Why would Pete Diaz want to? He doesn't want anything from you specifically, Vincent said. Your leverage, you and Aiden. He paused. Someone needed something from me that I wouldn't give through normal channels, so they went looking for a different kind of pressure. His jaw shifted. They found it. Who needed something from you? He held her gaze. That's what I'm going to find out in the next hour. He turned to the doorway where Marco was waiting with the particular alert patience of a man who has spent 11 years being needed before he's asked. Find Pete, Vincent said. 2 words. Marco was on his phone before he'd finished turning. Vincent came back to her. The professional hardness shifted, not disappearing, but making room the way a heavy curtain makes room for light when you pull it back just slightly. He looked at Aiden, who had returned to his blocks with the philosophical resilience of a 3-year-old for whom adults in crisis are ambient background noise. He's all right, Vincent said, quietly, only for her. He's fine. He thinks the scary men came and someone fixed it. Someone did. Vincent. She kept her voice low. Angled away from Aiden. Don't make this simple. Tonight doesn't just fix things. I know that. You showing up, it doesn't erase. Olivia, not raise, just firm. The verbal equivalent of a hand on a railing. I know, we're not having that conversation tonight. Tonight I need to make sure you're safe. Everything else is after that. She looked at him. She wanted to argue. She found she didn't have the fuel for it, not tonight, not with the adrenaline still working its way out of her system, not with her hands still not entirely steady at her sides. Okay, she said. So what happens now? What happened now was Vincent made 4 phone calls over the next 14 minutes, none of which Olivia was meant to fully hear, and all of which she partially heard anyway from the kitchen where she was making Aiden a bowl of cereal, the surreal domesticity of it, something she chose not to examine too closely. The first call, short technical, secure the floor, nobody in or out. 2 more men appeared in the hallway within 3 minutes. The second call longer, quieter. She caught the phrase Caruso needs to know before this goes further and understood that machinery was moving in a world she had deliberately left. The third call stopped her cold. I don't care where he is, Vincent said. Quiet, colder than the previous 2. Bring him to Congress Street, the warehouse. A pause. And Danny, make sure he understands what this is before you put him in the car. I want him to have time to think. Olivia set the spoon down. She turned and looked at him across the apartment. He ended the call and found her eyes. What are you going to do to him? She said. Handle it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Vincent. He put my son in danger. The control cracked for the first time. Not explosively, just the way ice cracks under pressure in one clean line before it holds again. He knew about Aiden. He'd been watching you for 14 months while I was searching for you, and he used that information to build a weapon pointed at both of you instead of coming to me. His voice didn't rise. It fell, the most dangerous direction. There is no version of tonight where that doesn't have a consequence. She looked at him for a long moment. She thought about arguing. She thought about the limits of what she could change and which battles cost more than they were worth, And the fact that 3 years ago she had left specifically because she'd never fully resolved that question. She still hadn't resolved it. But she turned back to the kitchen and picked up the spoon because Aiden was hungry, and some things were immediately in front of you, and some things were further away, and the further away things would still be there when she had time for them. Mama, Aiden was watching her from the table, his chin in both hands. Is the man staying? For a little while. He thought about this. He talks like you. She raised an eyebrow. Like me. Like he's in charge. Aiden said it with complete seriousness, as if this were a recognized and neutral category of person. Then he went back to his cereal. Olivia stood at the counter and felt something loosen in her chest that had been knotted since the knock at the door, maybe longer, maybe for 3 years. The particular loosening that happens when someone who has been carrying everything alone realizes for one unguarded second that they don't have to. The fourth call didn't go out. It came in. Vincent's phone rang at 9:17. He looked at the screen. Something moved in his face, the expression of a man receiving a call he had expected but hadn't wanted to arrive quite yet. Sal. He walked to the window. I know. That's why I haven't called yet. I'm still building the picture. Listening. No, whatever Caruso told you, I have it contained. Listening again, and this time Olivia could hear faintly the voice on the other end, not calm, not close to calm. She watched his shoulders. She had learned in the time she'd spent with him that his face was always managed, always the product of practice. But the shoulders told the truth, and his shoulders right now were doing something she hadn't seen, holding against real pressure. Sal. His voice dropped one register, a warning inside the name. I understand your position. You need to understand mine. This is my family. Whatever political shape Caruso has put on it, whatever version of tonight he handed you, this is my family. And I will handle it the way I see fit. A pause, listening. Then we meet in person. Tomorrow morning, not on the phone. He ended the call. He stood at the window without turning around. Marco appeared in the doorway. He caught Olivia's eye, then looked at Vincent. Boss, we have Pete. Vincent turned. Whatever the phone call with Sal had done to his expression, it was gone now. What replaced it was the face that ran an empire, the one that never blinked first. One more thing, Marco said, and hesitated in the specific way that meant the one more thing was significant. Pete didn't come alone. He had a lawyer on standby when Danny picked him up. Prearranged, waiting before we even moved. He paused. It's Brennan, Caruso's personal attorney. The room changed again. Olivia watched it change on Vincent's face, watched the calculation happen behind his eyes, fast layered, pulling at a thread and following it to where it led. He knew we'd move, Vincent said. Not a question. Seems like? Which means someone told him. Which means, Marco said carefully, someone in our circle made a call in the last hour. Silence. Someone who had been in that penthouse or had access to the information that had moved through it since 9 o'clock had reached Pete Diaz fast enough for Pete to have Caruso's attorney standing by. Which meant that tonight was not a collection call and not a debt and not even about Pete Diaz. Tonight was a construction, engineered, preloaded, waiting for a trigger. And the trigger had been a photograph on a shelf in a South Boston apartment in a 3-year-old who'd fallen asleep early. Olivia watched Vincent understand the full shape of it, watched it move through him, not as emotion, but as information being filed in a very cold and very organized place. Bring Pete to Congress Street, he said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He looked at Olivia. 1 hour, my men are in the hall. Don't open for anyone. What are you going to find out? Who built tonight, he said, and why? And then, he paused. He looked at her with an expression that held very imperfectly about 6 different things at once. And then I come back. You keep leaving and coming back. I keep having reasons to come back, he said, and walked out. Aiden talked about Vincent for the full 20 minutes it took him to tire himself out and accept sleep. He talked about his voice on the phone. He talked about how he came like he said he would. He talked about the scratchy face. He's real, Aiden said at one point, with great conviction, settling his cheek against the pillow. Yeah, buddy, Olivia said. He's real. Good. His eyes were closing. I liked him. He was asleep within 90 seconds. Olivia sat on the edge of his bed in the dark for another 3 minutes, just listening to him breathe. Just being in the same room with the fact that he was safe. She was back in the kitchen when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost let it go. Then she thought about all the unknown numbers that had mattered tonight and answered. Ms. Harris, a woman's voice, crisp, measured, carrying the specific authority of someone accustomed to being taken seriously in rooms that don't automatically offer it. My name is Angela Reeves. I work directly for Commissioner Benedetto. Olivia's hand tightened. It's 10:30. I'm aware. This couldn't be done in the morning. A pause. The commissioner has information that concerns tonight's events, information that will directly affect what happens when Mr. Moretti meets with Caruso tomorrow. He needs you to have it first. Why me? Because you'll think with it clearly, Angela said, and because she stopped choosing something from a short list, because Benedetto has a daughter your age, and he watched what was done to you tonight, and he decided you deserved to know before anyone made decisions you couldn't undo. The kitchen felt very still. What does he need from me? Olivia said. A meeting, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, before the Caruso sit-down. A pause. Come alone. The next sentence was deliberate and clear. Don't tell Mr. Moretti about this call. The line went dead. Olivia set the phone on the counter. She stood very still. She heard Vincent's footsteps on the stairs before he knocked. She heard the door open. She heard him cross the living room. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled, looking more human and more tired than he had all night. He looked at her face for 2 seconds, the look of a man who reads rooms, and said, "What happened?" She could have kept it. Angela had told her not to. 3 years ago, she had made entire architectures out of things Vincent didn't know, and she had told herself every time that it was protection. She knew where that road went. I got a call, she said, from someone who works for Benedetto. They want to meet with me tomorrow morning before your meeting with Caruso. She held his eyes. They told me not to tell you. Vincent went completely still. But I'm done making unilateral decisions about what you should and shouldn't know, she said. So there it is. Something happened in his expression. Not surprised, she'd never seen surprise on his face and didn't expect to start now. Something more interior than that. Recognition, maybe, or the adjustment of a man receiving something he hadn't calculated for. He sat down at the kitchen table. Tell me everything she said, he said. She sat down across from him, and she did. They sat at the kitchen table while Vincent worked through it. He didn't pace. He didn't reach for his phone. He sat with his hands flat on the table, and he thought, and Olivia had learned to read that stillness. It wasn't absence. It was a particular quality of presence. Everything pointed inward, while something very fast happened behind his eyes. Benedetto sent his personal aid, he said, at 10:30 at night, direct to you, without going through any of the normal channels. He was speaking slowly, laying each piece down like he was building something. That means he doesn't trust the normal channels. Meaning someone in your circle is feeding information to someone else. We already knew that. Pete had a lawyer waiting. He looked up from the table. The question is whether Benedetto is genuinely trying to help you or using you as an approach vector to get to me from a direction I'm not guarding. Angela said the information changes the risk profile of tomorrow's meeting with Caruso. I don't doubt it. The question is whose risk profile it changes and in which direction. He paused. Go to the meeting. She hadn't expected that. You want me to? I want you to go in like they expect. One woman alone walking through a door. He leaned forward slightly. I want 2 of my men in the building, 4 on the street, and a wire on you that no one in that room will think to look for. Olivia looked at him. A wire? The adhesive kind. You won't know it's there except that you will because I've just told you it's there. She almost smiled. Not quite. You want me to walk into a meeting with a city commissioner's aide wearing a wire. I want to know what Benedetto knows and why he chose tonight and why he chose you. He held her gaze. Do you trust her, Angela Reeves? What did your gut say? Olivia thought about the voice on the phone, the precision of it, the moment when the professional tone had shifted just slightly and something more personal had come through. The commissioner has a daughter your age. I think she was telling the truth, she said. I think there's real information. I just don't know yet who it actually serves. Then we go in with open eyes and find out, Vincent said. He reached inside his jacket and set something on the table. She looked down, a banded stack of bills clean, and on top of it, separate $68, 3 20s of 5 3-1s. She recognized every denomination. That's yours, he said. The 68 is what Rico took. The rest covers the loan principal, every cent of interest Caruso charged. As of tonight, the debt doesn't exist. She looked at the money. She looked at him. She picked up the $68. She pushed the rest across the table. "Thank you for the 68, she said. "I don't want the rest. The last dynamic I want between us is money." He looked at what she'd returned. He looked at her face. He put it back without argument. "Fair," he said. "No pressure, no performance. Just fair." She breathed. They were still sitting at the table when they heard it. A small sound in the hallway light. Footsteps, the specific irregular rhythm of a 3-year-old moving in the dark. Aiden appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair flattened on one side, blanket dragging eyes at half-mast. He looked at Olivia. He looked at Vincent. He walked directly to Vincent and stopped in front of him and raised both arms. The universal signal, wordless and absolute, "Pick me up." Vincent looked at those small, raised arms for 1 second, where his whole face did something that couldn't be named and didn't need to be, and then reached down and lifted his son. Aiden settled against his shoulder with the immediate completeness of a child who has made a permanent decision about a person. He put his cheek against Vincent's neck and closed his on. He was back asleep in under a minute. Vincent stood in the kitchen, holding 34 pounds of sleeping child, and he didn't put him down, and he didn't speak, and his hand moved to the child's back and rested there, careful wide, as if he was afraid of pressing too hard. "He's heavy," Vincent said. His voice was rough at the edges. 34 pounds. "He's heavy," he said again, not complaining, marveling, as if the physical weight of it was the most important fact he had ever learned, as if weight meant real and real meant here. And here meant that 3 years of absence had not taken this from him permanently, that there was still something to hold. Olivia watched them. She had run. She had told herself it was protection. She had been right about some of it and catastrophically wrong about the rest. And she was standing in her kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, watching the cost of that error breathe slowly against a man's shoulder, and she could not look away from it. She took them both to Aiden's room. Vincent lowered him onto the bed with the focused delicacy of a man diffusing something. Aiden stirred. His eyes opened halfway. "Stay," he said, upward, at Vincent, not a question. Vincent looked at the edge of the small bed. He looked at Olivia in the doorway. She nodded. He sat. He put his hand on Aiden's back. 30 seconds. His son was asleep. Olivia went to the kitchen. She stood at the counter. She breathed. She was still standing there when her phone buzzed Angela Reeves's promised address. Financial District, 8 a.m. She photographed it. She sent it to Vincent's number before she could think about it too long. His reply came in 4 seconds. "I'll have it covered. Get some sleep." She almost laughed at the instruction. She didn't laugh because she was too tired and because, somehow impossibly, she thought she actually might. She checked on Aiden one more time. Vincent was still there, sitting on the edge of the small bed in the dark, his hand still on his son's back, not moving. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. She went to bed. At some point in the next hour, she heard him move through the apartment. She heard the front door quiet, careful, the new lock engaging, cleanly. She heard the men in the hallway exchange a few words low. She heard from the street below a car door, an engine. She heard nothing after that. She slept. Marco handed her the coffee and the wire at 7:12 and said, "Coffee is the word," and she said she understood and went back inside to sit across from her son while he ate breakfast. Aiden ate with great concentration. He had questions. Why was the man from the hallway here so early? Did he like cereal? Was the scratchy-faced man coming back for breakfast? And Olivia answered what she could and deflected what she couldn't and thought about the wire stuck to her collarbone and the folder she was going to carry into a building in the financial district in 46 minutes. At 7:40, Vincent knocked. He came in with a paper bag from the bakery 2 blocks over, the right bakery, the almond croissants, the Sunday morning ones, and she didn't ask how he knew. She was starting to understand that there were categories of information Vincent had simply filed and kept during the years, in the absence, the way you keep something you expect to need again. "He awake," Vincent said. "Since 6, she said. "He's been awake since 6 asking about you." Vincent stopped in the kitchen doorway. Aiden looked up from his bowl. He pointed at the bag. "Those smell better than mine." "Probably," Vincent said. "Can I have one?" "Aiden," Olivia started. "Yeah," Vincent said. He set the bag on the table and sat down. "You can have one?" Aiden took one with both hands and bit into it with the commitment of someone who has been waiting for this exact moment. He chewed. He considered. "It's good," he announced. "I'm glad," Vincent said. They ate, the three of them at the mismatched table with the morning coming through the window and the city outside that didn't know or care what had happened the night before in a fourth-floor apartment on Waverly Street. At 7:50, Olivia stood up. She put on her coat. Aiden looked up immediately. His face did the specific thing it did when he suspected she was leaving. "Where are you going?" "An errand, baby. I'll be back by 9. "What kind of errand?" "The boring kind." He considered this evidence. Apparently found it insufficient. "Can the scratchy man stay?" Olivia looked at Vincent. Vincent looked at Aiden. "Yeah," Vincent said. "I'll stay." And just like that, the negotiation was over. Aiden went back to his croissant with complete peace of mind. Olivia kissed the top of his head. She met Vincent's eyes over the top of her son's head. She nodded once. He nodded back. She walked out. Angela Reeves was already there when Olivia arrived at 3 minutes to 8. No assistant, no reception, a conference room on the 3rd floor with 2 coffees and a leather folder, and the specific stillness of someone who has prepared thoroughly and is now simply waiting. She stood when Olivia came in, shook her hand once, sat back down. "Thank you for coming," she said, "and for telling him. You expected me to. I hoped you would. It confirmed something we needed to know." She opened the folder. "What I'm about to tell you, the commissioner is prepared to formalize through federal channels. This isn't a warning or a suggestion. It's documentation." She paused. The events of last night were not a debt collection. "I know. They were a trigger mechanism designed specifically to push Vincent Moretti into a direct public confrontation with Caruso heated enough, visible enough to give a third-party grounds to move against both organizations simultaneously." She turned the folder toward Olivia. "The party is a man named Gerald Fitch, private logistics, Providence, clean public profile. He's been systematically acquiring Eastern Seaboard terminal access for 4 years. Boston is his final piece. The harbor contract dispute between Moretti and Caruso is real, but it was manufactured into a crisis by Fitch over 8 months through Pete Diaz and through Caruso's advisors specifically to produce the confrontation he needs to clear the board." Olivia looked at the documents, names, dates, wire transfer records, the specific unromantic paper trail of a plan that had been running for nearly a year. "He knew about me," she said, "before Caruso did." Angela's voice was precise. "Fitch has a contact inside the federal task force that's been monitoring Moretti's organization. That contact gave Fitch access to surveillance files, including your location, your assumed name, your son's existence." She paused. "A federal law enforcement officer gave your location to a private businessman who used it to engineer a situation designed to destroy 2 criminal empires and open a port for his own acquisition." The room was very quiet. Olivia processed it the way she processed everything significant, quietly, completely, taking it apart and putting it back together until she understood it from every angle. "Why tell me?" she said. "Why not Benedetto go directly to Vincent?" "Because Moretti will react," Angela said simply. "His response to this information delivered to him directly will be immediate and physical, and that is exactly what Fitch's people are positioned to capture. They need Vincent angry and moving. They'd need the confrontation." She paused. "But you'll think first. The commissioner believes that. And he believes that if you bring Moretti this information, he will hear it from you in a way he won't hear it from anyone else." Olivia sat with that. She thought about the kitchen table last night. She thought about Vincent sitting very still and thinking while she watched. She thought about him saying picking it up from her and using it without ceremony like it was something he'd been waiting to be allowed. "The task force contact," she said. "Benedetto has the name." "Yes, the suspension has already been initiated as of this morning. The prosecution thread is moving." Angela closed the folder. "But the timeline matters. If Moretti walks into Caruso's meeting without this information—" "The meeting is the trap," Olivia said. Angela nodded. Olivia picked up the folder. She stood up. She held out her hand. Angela shook it, held it for a moment. "The commissioner's daughter's name is Maria," she said. "She's 33. She has a boy who's almost 4. She let go of Olivia's hand. He wanted you to know that." Olivia walked out. The SUV was at the curb before she hit the sidewalk. She got in. Vincent looked at her face. He did not ask if she was all right. He asked, "Tell me." She told him. All of it. Gerald Fitch, the logistics company, The federal contact, the terminal acquisition, the 8 months of manufactured pressure, the fact that the meeting with Caruso was not a resolution but a detonator. She watched him absorb it, watched the reconfiguration happen in real time. Pete confirmed the financial structure last night, he said slowly. Not Fitch by name, but the shape of external orchestration. I had that piece by 3 a.m. He looked at the folder she handed him. The federal contact is the piece I didn't have. Benedetto's already moving on it. Then Caruso didn't know the full picture either. He said it like a calculation, not forgiveness. He was used the same way Pete was used, more willingly, but used. Does that change what you do? He was quiet for a moment. It changes the meeting. He looked at Marco. Cancel Caruso. I'll call him directly. Marco reached for his phone and reached Benedetto's office. Tell him I want 5 minutes before he goes to the prosecutor. I have supplemental documentation that strengthens the federal case. He paused. Pete's information from last night. It corroborates Fitch's wire transfers. Marco nodded and stepped out. Vincent turned back to Olivia. He looked at her for a long moment. The task force, he said. He said it carefully. That's been active for 2 years, monitoring my organization. Whatever Fitch's contact was doing on the side, the task force itself is real. And if Benedetto's prosecution opens this up, it could open you up, she said. It could. He held her gaze. I want you to know that, before we have any other conversation, before anything else about what this, a small gesture that held everything, looks like going forward. You deserve the complete picture. This was the conversation, the one she had run from before they could get here. The one that required her to sit with the full weight of what his life cost and decide with clear eyes what she was actually choosing. She wasn't running now. I know who you are, she said. I knew before I left. Knowing was never the problem. She paused. The problem was I didn't trust myself to choose clearly when I was close to you. The closeness changed how I thought. And now I'm still close to you, she said, and I'm still not entirely clear. But I'm tired of making decisions from fear. Every decision I made for 3 years came from fear, and I ended up with a broken door and my son calling a stranger to ask if he was his daddy. She looked at him. I don't want to live like that anymore. Vincent was very still. What do you want? He said, just that, plainly. I want Aiden to know his father. I want that to happen safely. I wanted to keep my job, my apartment, my independence. She paused. And I want to stop pretending that 3 years changed what was already true between us. He was quieted for a moment that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. It didn't, he said. In case you needed to hear, it said. She hadn't been going to ask, but hearing it plainly without performance, as simple and unelaborated as a fact, did something to the last piece of tension she'd been carrying. Released it quietly, permanently. Marco knocked. Caruso's been reached. He'll take the call. And he paused. Benedetto's office just confirmed the task force contact is suspended. Federal review initiated. It's moving fast. Vincent nodded. He looked at Olivia. Come back to Waverly Street with me, he said. I'm already going back to Waverly Street. Come back with me, he said again. Different emphasis this time. She held his gaze. Yeah, she said. Okay. Aiden was on his 3rd attempt at a block tower when they walked in, and he abandoned it, instantly stood up and walked to Vincent with the directness of someone who has decided on a person and sees no reason to perform indifference about it. You came back, Aiden said. I said I would, Vincent said. Aiden nodded. That was sufficient. He held up the block he was carrying, blue rectangular, slightly chewed at one corner. Do you know how to build towers? I know how to build things, Vincent said. Okay, Aiden handed him the block. You can help. Olivia sat on the couch and watched her son teach his father the rules of block tower construction, which blocks went on the bottom, why you had to go slow at the top, what happened if you went too fast at the top, which he demonstrated by going too fast at the top. The tower fell. Aiden said "see" with enormous satisfaction and began again. Vincent sat on the floor. He listened. He followed the rules. He went slow at the top. The tower stood. Aiden looked at it, looked at Vincent. You're good at this, he said with the gravity of someone delivering a significant professional assessment. Thank you, Vincent said. Olivia's phone buzzed. Danny Reeves texting. Pete is talking, everything, all of it. Names, accounts, Fitch's full communication record for 8 months. Boss, we have it all. She read it twice. She walked to the kitchen and called Vincent's number. He picked up in 2 seconds despite being 15 feet away. Danny has everything she said. I saw it. He was watching Aiden attempt an even taller tower. Send it to Benedetto's office. Full package. That's what you want. You're just giving it to Benedetto. Fitch built a machine to destroy 2 organizations and clear a port for himself, using a federal officer and a 3-year-old child. He paused. The appropriate consequence for that is not something I deliver personally. It's something that follows him for the rest of his professional life through every legal channel that exists. He paused. That's worse. She was quiet for a moment. Who are you, she said. She meant it half seriously. He took it fully seriously. Someone who spent 2 years deciding what I'm willing to be, he said. The answer isn't settled, but it's different from what it was when you left. A pause when he paused. That's part of what I want you to know. The exposure question, the task force, some of that is old exposure. Things I've been moving away from. Not clean, but moving. Is that enough? She said. I don't know, he said honestly. That's your question to answer, not mine. She looked through the kitchen doorway at the 2 of them on the floor. The man and the boy rebuilding the fallen tower with great seriousness, the child offering loud engineering opinions, and the man implementing them with quiet compliance. She thought about 3 years. She thought about $68. She thought about a phone call that lasted 6 minutes and 42 seconds and had rearranged the world. It's enough to start, she said. A pause. That's all I'm asking for, he said. She hung up. She went back to the living room. She sat on the floor next to them cross-legged and picked up a block. Aiden looked at her. You're helping? I'm helping. Okay? He handed her a green one. You do the middle. She did the middle. The tower rose blue at the base green through the center, a chaotic, multicolored spire at the top, because Aiden had taken over the top with his own aesthetic philosophy. It stood longer than any of the previous attempts. Aiden stared at it with great satisfaction. It's the tallest one, he said. Yeah, Olivia said. Because we did it together, Aiden said, with the unself-conscious wisdom that 3-year-olds occasionally produce without understanding what they've said. Olivia felt Vincent look at her. She didn't look back right away. She looked at the tower, precarious, uneven, nothing like the structures either of them would have built alone, held together by the improbable architecture of what the 3 of them had each brought to the floor. She looked up. He was already watching her. Together, she said. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Outside, the city moved. Gerald Fitch's attorney was answering questions in a federal building 2 miles away. Pete Diaz was signing documents he could not unsign. The federal task force contact was in the process of having a very bad week that would extend into a very bad several years. Sal Benedetto was delivering the documentation package that would close the harbor contract dispute permanently. Not in Caruso's favor, not in Vincent's, but in the clean and final language of a deal that had been made corrupted and was being made again from scratch. Rico Vargas returned $68 by messenger at noon, 3 20s of 5 3-1s in a sealed envelope with no note. Olivia opened it. She looked at the bills. She put them in the drawer where she kept the money she was saving for Aiden's first real bike. The last trace of last night filed away. That afternoon, Vincent fixed the shelf Rico had disturbed. He did it with a screwdriver from under Olivia's sink and the focused precision he brought to everything, and Aiden sat on the floor and handed him screws one at a time with great ceremony, as if each screw were a sacred object being transferred in an important ritual. Olivia put the photograph back. Not face down, straight, level. The one with the 2 of them before fear had fully arrived. She hung it where it was always supposed to hang at eye level in the light, the way you keep a thing when you have decided you are no longer ashamed of it. Vincent came and stood beside her and looked at it. We were different then, she said. Yeah, he said, but the important parts were already there. He looked at the photograph for a long moment. He looked at her. Yeah, he said again, they were. Aiden appeared between them, looked up at the photograph, looked at Olivia, looked at Vincent. That's you, he said, pointing at each of them. That's us, Olivia confirmed. He looked at it again with great concentration. Where am I? Olivia looked at Vincent. Something moved between them, a breath, a recognition, the particular softness of a question that has only one honest answer. You weren't there yet, she said. But now I am, Aiden said. Now you are, she said. He accepted this with complete satisfaction and went back to his blocks. Olivia stood beside Vincent in the afternoon light of a patched and repaired and still standing apartment, and she let herself feel for the first time in 3 years the full weight of what it meant to stop running. Not the relief of it, though, that was there, quiet and enormous. Not the fear of what came next, though, that was there, too smaller now, manageable. Just the fact of it. The solid present, unremarkable fact of being in the right place with the right people without hiding. It didn't feel the way she'd expected. It didn't feel dramatic or resolved or complete. It felt like a kitchen floor in a block tower and a man learning to go slow at the top. It felt like starting. That evening when Aiden was asleep and the apartment was quiet and the new lock was set and the new chain was on, Vincent didn't leave. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a legal pad, working through the documentation, the timeline, the last loose threads, and Olivia sat across from him with her nursing textbooks, and neither of them performed the significance of it. They just worked, in the same room, in the same light. The ordinary shared silence of two people who have decided without making an announcement that the space between them no longer needs to be managed. At some point he looked up. When he's older, he said, Aiden, what do you tell him? She thought about it. The truth, she said, all of it when he's ready for each piece. Even the hard parts. Especially those. She held his gaze. He's going to be someone who can handle hard things. He already is. She paused. He picked up a phone and called you. He's 3 years old and he didn't hesitate. Vincent looked at the table. Something moved through him that he didn't try to contain. He's brave, he said. He got it from somewhere, she said. He looked at her. She looked back at him, steady, unhidden, with the eyes of someone who has stopped trying to see less clearly in order to feel safer. He reached across the table. His hand covered hers. She turned her hand over. Let it. And in the quiet apartment on Waverly Street, with a child asleep in the next room who had changed everything by asking a single question and accepting the answer without doubt, a family that had been broken apart by fear and put back together by a 3-year-old's impossible faith, settled into the first ordinary night of the rest of their lives. Some stories start with a knock on the door. This one ended with the door locked from the inside, both people on the right side of it, and a small boy asleep in the next room who had never doubted for a single moment that the answer would come. It always does when you're brave enough to ask.